First, before we get into it, I just have to take care of a little housekeeping. In a podcast a few weeks ago, we were interviewing Cleo Pascal and Matt. Now, everyone, look at those innocent puppy dog eyes. In this episode, a couple weeks ago, Matt, with his very unique sense of humor, made a joke about the CIA pushing regime change in India. Matt, would you like to say something about that? I feel like a lot of Indian viewers commented on that.
It's not even a storm in a teacup. It's in a storm in a thimble, actually, because even Cleo was a bit upset about it. But the fact is, in India, you had a few crazies getting upset, but they get upset about everything. I mean, if they see this podcast, you'll get some crazies getting upset. So honestly, I don't see what the fuss is about over there. There was no fuss here. And because I think we are reasonably certain that, God forbid, the CIA is good, trying for regime change as it did in the bad old days of the old Cold War when we were staunch friends of the USSR. I don't think that they didn't succeed then, they're not going to succeed now. I'm quite, so no problem at all. For God's sake, Matt, I mean, only thing is that sometimes everybody may not get the joke, and that may include me, because our sense of humor may be a little different. That's all. But otherwise, don't worry about it. It's no problem.
Yeah, well, most people say my sense of humor is, in fact, not that funny. And so that's probably what's going on. But for clarity, the CIA does have a history of attempting regime change, not a good history. I'm not proud of that as an American. And I think that any attempt, I agree with you, Professor, that it would not succeed in India, nor ought it be attempted. But the only thing I really apologize for is having such an awful sense of humor. And yet, I do believe that sense of humor will continue today and on future podcasts. I'm not going to change my behavior.
Well, I'm glad we got that out of the way. It actually leads into my first question, because CIA pushing regime change, it's a real thing, and this is important whenever we talk about China, because anytime there's a big protest in China or in Hong Kong, the Communist Party always falls back on, it's hostile foreign forces. So I think it's worth looking at what it looks like when the CIA is actually doing something. And in India, it was interesting. There was a movie a few years ago called Rocketry that actually talked about that. Professor Nalapat, can you tell us a little bit about that story, what this sort of thing actually looks like?
Well, to be frank with you, I mean, some of us believe very clearly that there is a new Cold War on. We call it Cold War 2.0, and it's between the United States and China as the main protagonists. And the earlier Cold War was between the USSR and the US as the main protagonists. And quite frankly, we have got a bad rap of being an ally of the USSR. We have never conducted a single military exercise during the time when the USSR was there, a single military exercise. Privately, I mean, the Prime Minister decided that publicly would be counterproductive. Privately, the USSR was warned, the leadership of the CPSU Politburo, about Czechoslovakia, about Hungary, and very importantly, about Afghanistan. But the reality is that, the Pakistan very cleverly got on the US side early on, SEATO, CENTO, everything. And the US has a very, if I may say so, gentlemanly tradition of not falling in love with more than one individual, one rival. So clearly they preferred Pakistan. They flooded Pakistan with arms. They created a lot of problems for us in the matter of Kashmir. Now, let me remind you, we have more than 200 million Muslims in India. And in Kashmir, at that point in time, when there was a huge ruckus, the Chinese, the Americans, the Europeans, some of the Gulf countries were all saying that Kashmir doesn't belong to you because it's Muslim majority. Hey, what about the 196 million Muslims in the rest of India? We are not a country of just one religion. And, and supposing you had a situation where Kashmir broke away because it was majority Muslim, can you imagine the impact on the Hindu psyche all across India? If they say, my God, if these guys get into majority, they'll want to break away. They still don't feel part of India. Let me end by saying, please remember, Chris and Matt, We were partitioned on the basis of religion. The British partitioned us. One third of our country was cut away to form Pakistan, which was an avowedly Islamic state. 38% of people in Pakistan in 1947 were non Muslims. Today, less than 1.5% is non Muslim. In India, we had about 38 or so million Muslims. Now we have 200 million Muslims. And I would like everybody in the West who knows a little bit of mathematics to tell us which is the intolerant country among these two.
Well, certainly we can see how outside stronger foreign countries can have a big impact on other countries, especially in Ukraine. And you recently wrote an interesting article about how the war in Ukraine is making a war for Taiwan more likely. What's your argument there?
Well, look, let me quote a chap called Morris Chang, who, as you know, he was the founder of TSMC, the largest manufacturer of chips in the world. I think it was on March 16, if I remember. He was having a kind of a Q&A with an American author who had written about the chips war. If I forget the name at this point, but Morris Chang said, "Well, look, let's be honest. When you're talking about friendshoring, reshoring, okay, you want industries to move to the US, friendshoring, please understand, you, from your actions, you don't consider Taiwan to be your friend." This was said publicly in a public forum by the chief of the founder of TSMC, who, by the way, before saying that, said he fully supports the idea of decoupling from China. And guess who doesn't support the idea of decoupling from China? A gentleman by the name of Joe Biden. I don't know if either of you have heard about him. He said, "Oh no, we are not looking at decoupling. We are looking at de-risking." All right. Now you have United States, senior people, whether Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, you name it, all these gentlemen, and I hope there are a few ladies as well among them. They ought to be. But the fact is, they talk to the Taiwanese in very honeyed tones. And then they talk to other countries and to each other in a different tone. And in today's world of seepages, of leakages, of conversation, I don't know how the Biden administration believes that what it says to the Taiwanese, "Oh, we are with you, we'll stand with you, we'll do whatever, we'll fight and die with you." And then they talk to other countries. Why are you, we want to de risk. And yes, Taiwan is a risk. And these same individuals keep calling Taiwan a risky place. Frankly, and now Joe Biden opens that wound by saying we're not decoupling, we are de-risking. And guess one of the countries he wants to de-risk from? It's Taiwan. And I'm not, don't take my statement for it. I'm a citizen of India. I have nothing to do with US or US politics, although I love that country. It's one of my favorite countries. But the reality is, Biden has openly said, we are not decoupling from China. Please note that. We are de-risking. And hey, whom are we de-risking from? From Taiwan. Now, you had, for example, TSMC's largest business rival in the US. And I think a few years ago, 2020, if I'm not mistaken, he openly said, "Oh my God, it's risky to get your chips from Taiwan. Get it from us. It's risky to get from Taiwan." Now, this is the message that's going out. Morris Chang is very correct. Taiwan is not a friend of the United States in terms of United States actions. Now, you can say the sweetest things, and you have a whole plane loads of Americans. John Bolton was the latest. And may I point out, Bolton, the same old script. Ukraine, look at Ukraine. Let me tell you, John Bolton may not have understood that, but there's a small difference between Taiwan and Ukraine. There's a civilizational difference. For one thing, Taiwan does not have a gun culture. The Ukrainians have been fighters. In fact, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union was led by Ukrainians, practically, except for the time it was led by a Georgian, Joseph Stalin. And the Ukrainians did a pretty good job, because by 92, the Soviet Union, which is majority Russian, collapsed. I'm just saying that frankly as a joke. But what I want to say, quite frankly, is the Taiwanese, you're psyching them. You're psyching them because they don't want to be like Ukraine. And tell me one sane person anywhere in the world who would like to go the Ukrainian way. Have your cities destroyed. Have your people on the front line. Have ammunition blow up all over the place and be dependent on a constant stream. First of all, Taiwanese supply chains are very different from Ukrainian supply chains. Taiwanese manpower is different from Ukrainian manpower. And more importantly, the civilian connect. So there are literally dozens of senior Americans, and every one of them brings up the issue of Ukraine. I want to say, Chris and Matt, have you guys changed the name of your country from United States of America to Ukrainian States of America? Because you're obsessed with Ukraine. And you're obsessed with Ukraine in a way that you keep pushing on the Taiwanese. And let me tell you, the Taiwanese don't want to be another Ukraine. And now they are beginning to believe the Americans want Taiwan to be another Ukraine. That's not true, but that's what many of them are believing.